Hello, everyone. My apologies. I had to finish up recording a show with Lynn Taylor, Common Core Diva. And boy, what a doozy it's going to be when I get it uploaded. It is every time she comes in and talks to me, it's like I pretty much want to crawl under a rock, but it's about the whole push towards assisted suicide and how teaching our kids about mental health and depression and all these things while we have this movement going on in the United States, just as they've already accomplished it in Canada and most of Europe, is very, very dangerous to our children. So reason number 7,012 to homeschool. But that said, I know that homeschooling, I've talked about it before in these webinars. There are days where you're like, okay, it's a bad day today. And I've given you advice on that before. But what we haven't talked about is what feeling overwhelmed when you're homeschooling feels like or looks like, which is different. And it makes it difficult to explain to, let's say, a spouse who works all day and isn't there or doesn't really understand what the spouse who's primarily dealing with the homeschooling does, unless you've got it divided equally, or to friends and extended family. Because what ends up happening is if you want to seek support from your friends and family, or you do have a moment or a mood or something happens, or you don't get something done, or you can't go somewhere because you're too exhausted because you're overwhelmed, it it happens. Somebody's going to come and say, "You sure you want to keep doing this? And is this really the right way?" And that's only more deflating. So I find that if you're able to explain what it is and why it is, people will be more inclined to try to help you or refocus you on why you're doing it and how to get yourself unstuck or you know, underwhelmed. They're not underwhelmed, but properly whelmed, whatever that would be. I've often wondered about that. If you're overwhelmed, is there whelmed? Is there like a level of whelm that you're supposed to have? Anyway, so basically when this can happen is if you have, let's say, kids are sick or you're sick or just stuff is happening. So here are the main components of homeschool overwhelm, and then we'll talk about what we can do about them. The first and biggest one that I see is decision fatigue. When you are trying to make all the decisions that you need to make to homeschool your children, from choosing curriculum to deciding if it's working, to deciding what lesson to do in a given day or not do, to decide what activities are worth your time, worth your money. When you have multiple kids, what should I do for this one and that one? And how do I get them to agree? How do we fit this into the rhythm of our home life? There's so many decisions that you might have to make on a daily basis that you can get decision fatigue. You can start to feel like you're just done making decisions and you wish somebody else would do it for you, which, by the way, I believe is one of the big draws of schooling. Somebody else is deciding what's right for my kid, where they should be, what they should do, et cetera, and so forth. And now it's all on you. And if you are a really caring, loving parent and, with a little touch of perfectionism, I wouldn't know anything about that. It can be double because you're always wondering, is this really the best way? There's so many choices. What if there's a better one? Should we switch? Should we stick with it? Okay. So you need to come up with a way to make a decision-making process and then show yourself some grace for having done it. The thing that I say to myself all the time is nothing is final and nothing is fatal in the homeschooling decision-making tree. It just isn't. One of the benefits of homeschooling is that you can adapt and change anytime you want. Now, don't let that overwhelm you like, oh, the endless possibilities. Just remember that the fact that you made this decision today was based on you making rational, using rational thought process, weighing your options, weighing the trade-offs and making a decision. So you did that for reasons, your reasons. And the only reasons that matter are your reasons, your family's. Okay? You have to decide at the outset that that is good enough. The other thing you have to remind yourself is that good enough is good enough. And that kids are extraordinarily resilient. I mean, if kids have been putting up with the nonsense going on in public schools and they haven't all turned into little monsters so far, you got to know that they're pretty tough. That said, obviously, school is a bridge too far for most. So you're already, just by having them home, just by demonstrating I'm willing to do this, you're already doing something good. That was the most important decision that you made. Let that one guide all the others. Meaning, when you're not sure, when you feel like I just can't make another decision, I'm exhausted, and now I have to choose this, and I have to choose that, give yourself a break. You've made the most important decision, which was to homeschool. And if you need a day off from making decisions, don't make any. Lean into it. Don't run away from it. Just say, oh, this is one of those times. I need a rest. I need a break. You might also find yourself a trusted, I hate to use the word ally, but okay, could be your spouse, ought to be your spouse. But if it isn't, like a best homeschooling friend, somebody like that, where you can go and say, all right, you know what? I have to decide which of these extracurriculars to do for my kids, and they conflict because of the time frame. And then there's this, and I don't know which is more important. And I'm just exhausted. I can't do it anymore. And you can go tap that person and say, can you help me out? Not to make the decision, but just maybe like remind me like where the boundaries are on this. I'm just tired. I just can't do it. And that's if you have to do it that day. Like there's a deadline, got to sign up. If you don't. If you don't have to do it, don't. Take a break. Decision fatigue feels like I just don't want to make any more decisions. So don't. There's no deadline unless there's a deadline, and if there is, find a help. Ask for help from somebody you trust and see if they can, guide you or help you make the decision. And some educational challenges, I've tried 3 things. My child is not progressing. They're frustrated. They're not learning the skill. They're not learning this thing, can really take a toll on you because you feel like there aren't any more decisions to be made. It's just not working. That is when I suggest you take a break from that subject, that issue, that problem. Just put it to the side and let you and your child kind of like calm down from it for a while and move on with things that make them more excited and interested, whatever. Get your energy back and their energy back. So you're not just hammering away at this problem and like, what should I do about it? What should I do about it? Point of diminishing returns after a while. So take that off your plate. That's one of the benefits of homeschooling, and let the decision fatigue be your guide as to when you need a rest. But you'll be able to explain to other people, I make 1,000 decisions every day, which, by the way, every mom does and every dad does without homeschooling, now at homeschooling or schooling for that matter. It's just the decision fatigue is different. The fatigue in terms of compliance when you're in schooling is the problem. That's why they don't understand decision fatigue. So to explain, those things that you have other people do for you? Yeah, I do that myself. And it's not that it's hard. It's just that, in terms of like, I don't want to do it. It's hard in terms of it's worth doing. And I do it. And then I get tired and I need a break. And it makes me a little short tempered, and it makes me need people to back off and stop asking me what's for dinner or whatever, because I made enough decisions today. So you can just explain to them that it's something that people who take their kids to school don't deal with, but it's totally worth it. And then maybe you'll even remind them that they don't get the opportunity to make those decisions. That's the flip side of it. The responsibility of a decision, making the opportunity to make those decisions. How many parents right now are going, oh, no one asked me. I didn't get a say. You get a say, but there are trade-offs. The downside to a say is, what do I want to say? The next one is the emotional outlay. Like we teachers, who've taught in the classroom know this. People who send their kids to school and claim, I could never homeschool because it's just so, I couldn't do it. I don't have the patience. All right. This one they might understand, but again, they might jump straight to, well, why do you do it? I could never do it. And misery loves company. So you just say, well, I do it, obviously, because I love my children. Why do you have children? The emotional outlay of being a parent, period, is huge, right? It can be overwhelming even when your kids are in school. It's just that you have it, all day with they don't. And then they have a different emotional outlay for overcoming the fact that they're not close with their kids. So you can relate it to that and just say, how taxing it can be for you just on the weekends and so forth, and the emotional outlay from parenting and then coping with the stuff you don't know about because it's at school. Well, I have emotional outlay too. I'm just doing it all day. So if you catch me at the end of the day and I'm tired, I don't want to go to meet you and have a cup of coffee, or I don't answer your phone call right away, or I don't have it in me to be there for you. It's because I gave it the office. I was there all day emotionally, and now I need a little bit of a rest. But it doesn't mean I don't want to do it. It just means I spent all day in that emotional space, and maybe you didn't. Just saying. So that's something you can talk to people about is, if they start pushing on you to, "Well, what, you're never there, you don't return my phone calls, blah, 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 and, I need you. I I'm gonna check back in with you tomorrow. But today I need a break." And they just don't seem to get it. It can be discouraging, it can be frustrating. You can be easily distracted. That's what it feels like. You're like, what? What? That you're emotionally burnt out. And the other thing I recommend, if you feel like emotional burnout is what's coming up, is do something that feeds you emotionally. Now, that's going to be different for every person. For me, it is a little bit of escapism. So, like comedy, old movies and musicals that like kind of make me feel good and like remind me about beauty in the world and happy times and so on. And it just kind of like feeds my soul of, what I'm trying to preserve of, the good things in life. Maybe a little Lord of the Rings or something. Going out in nature. I know it sounds cliche, but yes, it works. You get to that point where you're just like, go for a walk with the kids, or just go outside, touch grass, as they say. But it can just feed your soul. If you're a type of person who likes to meditate, meditate. If you're the type of person who likes to take a hot bath, any kind of self-care that gives you a break or feeds your soul, feeds you emotionally, read poetry, whatever it does that like builds you back up to like really having the resources of this is, I'm doing good for good reasons and I feel good about myself and about the world. Do that. Kind of fill the tank on your own. There's really not an amount of emotional sustenance other people can give to you in this regard that's going to do as much as you can do for yourself. It's just going to depend on what that is for you. Some people tragically turn to like food and substances. I don't recommend that. This isn't about numbing emotions. This is about building up the good ones, the happy ones, the feel good ones. And that's usually done by doing things that make you personally feel happy and like happy to be alive. And then when you appreciate those, you have more to turn around and go, and now I have something to give my kids. So, and if you can encourage them to do the same, you're modeling for them how they can take care of their own emotions and take care of themselves. Remember, SEL happens at home. We do a better job of it as parents than they'll ever do in the school, and this is how we do it. We model it. You know what? I think I need a little bit of a brain break, you guys. I need to like I need to build up my strength. And I'm going to do X. And you go ahead and share that with the kids. What do you like to do to feel better? See what they say. All right, Crystal says, I make most of those decisions on the weekend when I plan the week. Additionally, I set up a couple of loop schedules at the beginning of the school year. So I just need to plug in the proper activity when it comes up in the loop. And I know we're covering all the things I want to cover. That's a fantastic suggestion. So this is another thing you can do is use the time when you have lots of energy or you're very focused, whether it's weekend or during the summer or wherever it is, and get everything out of the way. Again, it's all up to you. So many people who keep themselves on like school year schedule, school week schedule, whatever, they fall into overwhelm a lot more quickly because they're still in school mode and schedule mode. Got to get out of that rhythm. Think of rhythm, not schedule. Your family has a rhythm. You personally have a rhythm of when you like to really focus and make decisions and when you don't want to be bothered, when you just want it to like kind of take care of itself. So know yours and go ahead and lean into that. And the same is true for rebuilding your emotion. And just the only thing I suggest is that you can go ahead based on your kid's personality and disposition and so forth, and let them know what's going on with you in a positive light. You know what? I need to laugh. What makes you guys laugh? I need to laugh. Let's do some laughing. Or do you need a break? I need a break. If they don't need a break, then they'll be like, cool. I'm gonna go over here and take my mom brain break. You guys keep working on your stuff and we'll regroup, whatever. But just like kind of let them know what's going on with a smile on your face. And smiling, as we know, already makes you feel better. And then they'll see this is what we do. This is what we do when we don't feel so great. We feel emotionally overwhelmed. And then the last one, which is, well, it's not the last one. I'm sorry. There's two more. Perpetual interruption, which isn't the case for everyone, but it can be a cause of overwhelm. So if you have a pretty good rhythm going with your family and you are, even if you work from home, you've got things kind of in their little zone, you can keep the interruptions to a minimum. It's not a given that you're going to have constant interruptions, but for those of you who really are interrupted a lot, whether it's the pets are interrupting you, or you get a ton of phone calls, or you have a spouse who works at home too, and they're coming in and out of the room, and they're not on the same rhythm as you, and you're like, "Ugh," that can cause a feeling of overwhelm. But to Crystal's point, if you get yourself going in your, schedule slash rhythm, and you're comfortable with that, such that if things start to go off kilter, you just kind of loop back and you're covering what you need to cover. You know your kids are okay, or you have a plan in place for when these things happen. It's not that big a deal. You can also communicate with your loved ones or the people that you speak with that I'm available from this hour to this hour, and then make use of do not disturb, whether it's on your phone or your computer or whatever. If there's a time where you need to not be interrupted while you're homeschooling, make use of these technological tools and tune out the world. If it's your kids themselves who are interrupting you while you're trying to do something else because they're doing homeschooling, like I need help and da da da. Well, that goes back to how you set up I hesitate to use the word rules, but let's call it what it is. How you set up how the day is going to go with your children. What are the things they can or should come to you at right in the moment? And what are the things that they should sort of set to the side, do something else until meeting time, or until mom's done with work, or until whatever time that we can, you can ask me questions. And you have to plan your lessons or schedules or curriculum around that. Like, can I choose something that allows, that needs a lot of my input? Or can I not handle interruptions? Because I got to be busy over here on my computer working. Okay, I need more self-serve stuff for the hours of X and X. So you think through these things at the outset or in the summer on the weekends, and then you'll have fewer interruptions. These are various strategies, but you can explain it to the people around you. Say, I think I need to revisit this rhythm that we've got going on and come up with some strategies to minimize interruptions. Can you help me with that? Because that's going to help me feel less overwhelmed. But once you know what it is that's going on, you can address it. Um, then there's that sense of being on duty 24/7 without a break, which is what parents go through in general when they have small, like babies, let's say. And for homeschoolers, that can go on, especially with the younger kids, uh, ongoing, like forever. But everything I've just told you about strategies apply to this too. You're only as on duty as you want to be. Yes, even with elementary school kids. I tell the story all the time about how I made boxes for my kids with the little assignments that, just like Crystal, I set up on the weekend, and they went in a certain order and so on. And they could choose anything they wanted as long as it was in that box, and they could come and talk to me between the hours of X and X. And I was right in the next room. So if you're bleeding or something terrible, there I am. But in the meantime, there's always something for you to do if you don't understand the other thing, and you need to wait until 2 o'clock or whatever to get mom's help. So, you know, that cut down on the on duty thing. It also gave my kids a tremendous sense of personal responsibility and power, which, that personal power of I'm in charge. So while they weren't self-directing in the unschooling sense of like, what do I want to learn today? I'm just going to go randomly do stuff. They had lessons, they had folders, they had things I wanted them to read, they had things that they could do, but they also had 4 or 5 activities they could do when they finished, if they finished before I was free. That they could do to kind of give themselves a brain break because they were confused about something and going to come back to it. There were sort of approved layers of activities, and I just wasn't interrupted. And they felt very like empowered. And now I'm going to go back to my math. I actually had my kids say that to me a few times, like, my brain needed a rest. I was so confused, mom. My brain needed a rest. So I drew some pictures. Here are my pictures. And then I went back to my math. Will all kids do that? No, not necessarily, but they can. And it makes them feel very good about themselves. And then the next one is the long game. When you start to feel overwhelmed, sometimes thinking about the long game helps you. Sometimes it hurts you. So in other words, there'll be those days where you're like, college or not college, what are we doing here? Am I doing enough that they'll get into college? Am I doing too much considering they might never want to go to college? Do they really need this? Do they really need that? And you can be like, back to the original suggestion. Your children, when they get to that age, and it's really not before, later in high school, honestly, I would say sophomore year at the earliest, where they're going to start having stronger opinions on, do I want to go to college? Do I not want to go to college? Do I even have I even really thought about it? And if you're not pushing them to go to college, which I hope that you're not, um, then the long game is going to be what it's going to be. So if you have young children, don't even let this stress you out because you before high school, anything can be remediated. Like you don't have to do any foreign language at all. You don't have to do any of this stuff. Do what you think is necessary for them to learn to get to the next level of learning. The only time the whole am I doing enough to go to college, long game, career, all these other, are they going to be prepared for the outside world? That you should really be thinking about that enough to have it potentially overwhelm you is when your child is old enough to talk to them about it too. Shouldn't come up before then. It really shouldn't. Whenever I have elementary school parents or even middle school parents come to me and say, "Yes, but what about college?" I'm like, "They're in 6th grade. Why are you worried about that?" But I want to make sure they know enough. Like, there's time. Don't worry about it. Just the colleges aren't even going to care what they did in middle school. So unless you're telling me that you have a middle school student who doesn't know their ABCs and can't do multiplication, in which case, I suppose you might want to remediate that before you get to high school because then they might be held back and not be able to go to college. Uh, you're good. Don't worry about it. Even if they spent all 3 years of middle school reading literature and doing nothing else, they'd be okay. Everything's a repeat anyway. Have you noticed that in public school or even school? They just kind of repeat it. And it used to be they repeated a little more depth and the harder reading and stuff like that, but it was the same science and the same math, just higher level. And except when you get past algebra, geometry, pre-calc, calc, except when you get past, biology, now you have a harder biology, physics, things like that. But at the basic level, the middle school basics are the same as freshman year in high school, pretty much. So you could spend all 3 of those years with your kid just reading and practicing math problems or playing math games, or just spend all 3 years learning a foreign language. If you wanted to, you could. It would be fine. They would not be ruled out of going to college. In fact, it might even help them. My kid speaks fluent Mandarin. I mean, why not? So don't let the long game get in the way when, in fact, your opportunity to give your kid more options in terms of the long game is greater with homeschooling. So, like, just rest easy in that and don't let it overwhelm you. Um, and if you then the real last one is guilt, self-doubt, and the idea that you're carrying this whole burden of your child's education, like they're going to blame you, or if you do it wrong, their whole life is ruined. uh yeah, it's kind of goes hand in hand with the long game, but just don't do this. I mean, I hate to sound glib, but this is true of all parenting decisions. There's there are very few things that you can do that are truly going to destroy your child, and we know what they are. Abuse, right? Emotional abuse, verbal abuse, physical abuse, not feeding your child properly, nutritional neglect, things like that. You know, going along to get along when it comes to giving them medications that somebody tells you to give them and you didn't do the research. Like those kinds of things could have a lasting impact for sure. But when it comes to the day-to-day decisions of homeschooling, even if you had a day where you're like, I can't even today. I'm going to lie on the couch with like a compress on my forehead and watch soap operas. I mean, I'm just saying, like, let's say they'll be all right. It's going to be all right. Do not feel guilty. There's so much of what I learned in life that matters to me today, that is important to my life today. I learned long after school, college and grad school included. So I look back on the decisions that, my very imperfect dad made. Forget my mom, she was literally abusive, but just my dad who did his best, thought he was sending me to good schools, then kind of was. And then there's not a single solitary decision that he made about my education that if he'd made a different one, I feel like it would have made some huge difference. I really don't think so. I think he did the best he could. I got the most out of it I possibly could. I knew his heart was in the right place and he was doing what he thought was best. And I think if you don't carry extra weight of guilt, your kids will know it too. As long as you continually empower them to make bigger and bigger decisions about what they're learning as they get older, up into high school, the more they'll realize it's their decision ultimately. And you're doing the best you can. So, yeah, if you're doing it right, you you will worry about this, but you won't let it get the better of you. Um, and any task that you see other people doing during the day, including going to a job, may at some point feel easier than what you're doing with homeschool. But just remind yourself that, that long game, your child has so many more options. What if I'm not doing something right by them in terms of, guilt, self-doubt? What if I'm not smart enough? What if I wasn't the right person? You are the right person. You just are. Even if you have, a ninth grade education and you are doing the best you can to figure out what is good for them and, turning over all the rocks you can find, you're doing great. You're doing great because the fact that you have taken responsibility for your child's education sends such a powerful message of love to your child that there's no curriculum, there's no lesson plan, there is no anything that makes up for the message that sends your child. I am willing. I am here. I I'm willing to do it wrong on a given day. And think of the lesson that teaches your kids about what's okay for them to try and not get exactly right. So, you know, if it starts to creep up on you like, oh my God, what am I doing? Am I doing it wrong? Try as hard as you can to just take a deep breath, find one of these coping strategies, phone a friend, something like that. Send me a message in the chat. That's what I'm here for. And just talk it out. And you'll probably find out in short order that you just need a rest. That's all it is. You just need a break. So that's what I've got for you today. Again, please let me know in the uh, topic suggestions if there are things you specifically want me to research related to homeschooling, and I can bring them to you in these videos. So it could be super granular, whatever it might be. Let me know if you're looking, to figure out just anything. Let me be a little bit of a coping mechanism for you to prevent that overwhelm. For example, if you're trying to decide what's the best standardized test I should give my kids to meet state requirements, I can help. Doesn't mean I'll pick it for you, but I mean, let me do some legwork and I'll bring you a survey of the different tests. What if you're saying, I need to figure out if it's to my advantage to let them do dual enrollment or not? What is best for my kid? What about in my state? I don't know. Ask me and I'll go try to figure it out for you. And you can then take the information and make whatever decision you want to make. But that's what I'm here for. So yeah, use the features. And that's about it. Tonight's show on Dissident Dispatch is going to be a look at one specific district in New Jersey. We're going to go through um, a variety of resources to see how they're implementing the 2030 agenda in the classroom. And I think homeschoolers should tune in because this will help you on any of those days where you feel overwhelmed. Like, well, at least my kid's not in there. And I know it's sort of not that much of a relief because your child still does have to live in a world where there are kids who are there, but you'll feel that much more confident that you are doing the best thing you could possibly do. And if more parents did what you were doing, then your kid would have more, friends and outlets and so forth who are not stunted in their growth and probably heading towards mental illness, tragically. Yeah. So we'll take a look at that tonight. I am on it in about 15 minutes with Carrie Smith on her channel. So if you're interested in checking that out, I'll be talking some more about surveillance. And until Friday, I bid you adieu. Have a great rest of your day. Bye, guys.